It is 11:30. You know what that means. It's time to dive into all things people, power, and politics. This is The Pulse. I'm Roop Raj, and as always, we're glad you're turning to us each and every night for unbiased political news. This is the show that takes you out of that social media echo chamber. I had some choice words, but I'm not going to say anything. That gives you the straight facts, because when you pick that phone up, you don't know who's speaking the truth and who's not. So here's the truth as we know it now. It's an iconic part of Detroit's skyline whose future is up in the air. We're talking the RenCen, but now a local man has bought up one of the towers. That doctor is in Studio C tonight, as well as Detroit City Council member Mary Waters, with what they'd both like to see happen to the structure and the Detroit skyline. And Facebook and Instagram owner Meta in court for its antitrust trial as the DOJ tries to break up Google. We're talking with social media guru Ethan Lloyd about that, plus a messaging comparison between Republicans and Democrats, what the Dems aren't getting right, and what the Republicans could teach everybody. But we begin with the big Senate race. If you're watching the show on Friday, we asked you who you support in the pool of confirmed candidates. One of our Pulse viewers, Brian, said he supports State Senator Mallory McMurrow, adding things could change if Congresswoman Haley Stevens runs. Well, Brian, you've got a lot to think about now. Why? Because that's exactly what happened today. Congresswoman Stevens officially launching her bid to replace Senator Gary Peters, who you'll remember chose not to seek re-election. She made the announcement today with a video on social media focusing on the economy and President Trump's tariff policies.
Donald Trump has a much different plan for Michigan. His chaos and reckless tariffs are putting tens of thousands of Michigan jobs at risk. Donald Trump says he couldn't care less if auto prices rise. Well, as someone who spent my time in Congress fighting for Michigan jobs, Michigan families, and Michigan workers, I couldn't care more. Across the state, I know.
Hey, that's a piece of the ad. We're not going to air the whole thing. As we always joke on the show, we're not going to give all the candidates the entire 30 seconds or a minute, because that's paid airtime, right? But that was a sample of what she wants everybody to know. She joins a crowded Democratic field. Dr. Abdul Al-Sayed announced his run for Senate last week. He was on the show. He's a former Wayne County health director and a 2018 candidate for governor. Then you'll remember Mallory McMurrow, state senator, also running for the Democratic nod. She's seen as a rising star in the party. And on the Republican side, former Congressman Mike Rogers is making another run at Senate. You'll remember he narrowly lost it to now Senator Alyssa Slotkin in the 2024 race. You can watch all of our interviews with Dr. Al-Sayed and State Senator McMurrow, any interview, right now on fox2detroit.com. We're working with the Stevens and Rogers camps right now to get them into the studio to hear from them about their runs. You can watch for those right here on The Pulse. We've talked a lot about the economic uncertainty caused by President Trump's tariffs, and there's a new forecast by the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, that paints a bleak picture for 2025. The IMF is a major financial agency for the United Nations. And if you've been watching The Pulse, you'll know there's an easy way for us to tell this story, and that is to go by the numbers. So this first forecast predicts economic growth around the world. The IMF initially predicted in January the world's economy would grow 3.3%. Now, because of the uncertainty, they've actually lowered that one to 1 point. Now, it's an even bleaker picture for the U.S. The IMF initially predicted our economy would grow about 2.7%. But they've dropped that in their latest forecast to 1.8. And while the IMF doesn't think the U.S. will actually see a recession this year, they've raised the odds of actually that happening. In January, the odds they forecasted were just about 25%. Now they say it's closer to 40%. And if you do a comparison, those numbers by the IMF are in line with what other economists are predicting. You see, the Federal Reserve's economic forecast for the U.S. is 0.1% lower than the IMF's and J.P. Morgan's recession odds as well. And they're actually more pessimistic than the IMF. They say our recession odds are 60%. Now, to the good news, which we all need, it was actually a better day on Wall Street. After a rough start to the week, all three major indices were up to end the day. The Dow jumping, as you see here, more than 1,000 points. The Nasdaq by about 429, and the S&P 500 also saw an increase, climbing by 129 points. Turning now to the latest signal scandal involving Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. There's new claims tonight about where he got the information he shared in a chat with his wife, brother, and 11 others. Now, that's separate from the group chat that mistakenly included a journalist from The Atlantic. According to a person familiar with the chat, Hegseth pulled the information he posted in Signal from a secure communications channel used by U.S. Central Command. Now, those details included launch times and bomb drop times for actual warplanes about to strike Houthi targets in Yemen. Now, those are details multiple officials say are highly classified, despite the White House repeatedly claiming no classified information was shared at all. The White House is standing behind him, and Hegseth himself is doubling down on blaming people leaking information to the media. Take a listen.
Is not okay in national security policy, and we will stand behind that every day of the week.
Pete's doing a great job. Everybody's happy with him. We have the highest recruitment numbers I think we've had in 28 years.
I'm here to do one job for the president and the American people: secure the country. America first, peace through strength. I don't have time for leakers. I don't have time for the hoax press that peddles old stories from disgruntled employees.
Some perspective here. Former Defense Secretary Leon Panetta, who served in the Obama administration, called the text a serious breach of security, adding, attack plans are without question the most classified information you can possibly have. And if you think this is a party line issue in terms of support for Hegseth, think again. Now, some Republicans are sharing their concerns about the information Hegseth shared on his phone. Now to the memorials for Pope Francis. We're learning more about how the Vatican will give their final goodbyes to the late pontiff. The public viewing begins tomorrow. The funeral is 10 a.m. local time this Saturday, so that's 4 a.m. Eastern time. He'll be buried at St. Mary Major Basilica. Now, that's actually outside the Vatican, and that's breaking tradition, but that is home to his favorite icon, the Virgin Mary. We also talked with an Oakland University professor of religious studies last night on The Pulse about Pope Francis and his legacy and what comes next for the Catholic Church. If you'd like to watch that conversation, just scan the QR code on the right of your screen to watch last night's episode of The Pulse. Well, up next, it's an icon in the Detroit skyline, and now part of the RenCen has a new owner. We're speaking with him, plus Detroit City Council member Mary Waters weighs in. Detroit is changing. What's next? You're watching The Pulse here on Fox 2. Back now on The Pulse, looking at all things people, power, and politics. And joining us now to talk about the future of a Detroit landmark, Dr. Mahmoud Al-Hadidi, who owns Stockbridge Enterprises, recently buying Tower 600 of the Renaissance Center. And Detroit City Council member Mary Waters. Always good to see you both. Thanks for joining us here on The Pulse. Hey, I want to take you through some of the social media comments because this is so interesting. The Renaissance Center is such an iconic building. We are hearing from a lot of people who I asked on social media, hey, what do you think should happen to the RenCen? What do you think about this? And we had some really interesting responses. Cameron wrote in saying, I worked for a company in the 400 Tower. It was one of the first tenants when the building opened. Realistically, I can see not keeping a couple of towers. Don't think the building is utilized like it had been in the day. And then Dirk here also responded saying, it is an instantly recognizable symbol of the city of Detroit, both domestically and internationally. Even though it's relatively new, it's historically significant, so the building should be preserved. And Suzanne, thanks for writing in on The Pulse. She said, I personally do not want to see it lose any towers. It is a Detroit landmark. And so we begin the discussion with someone who says, okay, let's not lose all the towers. Let's buy one of the towers. I should say congratulations on buying a tower. I recently bought lunch today. You buy a tower. I mean, this is where, this is a wonderful thing. But really, you're a humble man. You work really hard, and you've worked hard to build up Stockbridge Enterprises. And now you decided to buy this for just over $9 million. This is Tower 600. Why is it that you decided to buy this tower of the Renaissance Center?
It's an iconic tower. We love Detroit, and I love the area. I love Detroit River, and the location is spectacular. The view is very nice. Things do not only have monetary value, it has emotional and moral values, and Renaissance Center is a tower that has a place in our heart. I trained at Detroit, looked at that tower every day, going in, going out. Always dreamt of being there, living there, been there a few times as a visitor. So it came at that value, and we have a very good positive plan for it, and we hope that we are going to turn it around. So some people will be happy working in it, some people will be happy living in it, and it will be a positive change for Detroit, a drop in the bucket, but all of us, if we could contribute together, elected officials, the mayor, the city council, entrepreneur, investors, and the citizens of Detroit, if we all put a drop in the bucket, we will be a river that's going to bring life, prosperity, and happiness to everybody.
Well, I don't think anyone can argue with your intentions here to want to continue to revive this great, wonderful city that already has seen so much life through the years, even through the struggling years. The city is always a beautiful, vibrant place. Councilwoman, when you hear about the plans, Dr. Al-Hadidi talking about building some large Renaissance Center lofts and then also filling up office space, what comes to mind for you?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that I want something that will include all of Detroiters. And I'm talking about those who have income levels from 30 to 50% of the AMI, the area median income. We're talking about people who make $35,000 and less in many instances. So we're not looking for someone that's just going to offer pie in the sky kinds of things. We're talking about things that will really help all people in the city of Detroit. And what comes to mind for me is the fact that, you know, we want to be like a Navy Pier in Chicago.
Sure.
Entertainment and bring in events and various events from out of town and so forth and so on. We want tourists to come in and be able to enjoy. We want Detroiters to be able to enjoy it. We already, the riverfront now has won first place for the last 3 years or so.
USA Today, right?
Yes, absolutely. And so this is an opportunity to make something wonderful happen on behalf of Detroiters. And when you talk about housing, I kind of want to know a little bit more about that. And when you're talking about office space, I want to make sure that we have businesses there, businesses that would not ever have an opportunity to have an office right there on the river.
So I'm hearing, Dr. Al-Hadidi, there are 7 towers of this Renaissance structure, right? And you're just responsible for this one.
One of the
However, are you looking at ways to maybe include those who otherwise have not been included in conversations in some way, shape, or form?
Absolutely, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you because we want prosperity for everybody. This is everybody's city. This is our city. When we make Detroit safe, prosperous, welcoming, it helps everybody. And everybody in Detroit have the right to enjoy that riverfront, have to enjoy the real estate there, and benefit from it.
Well,
by bringing offices back there, by bringing businesses there, that's only going to help everybody. Detroit has lost a lot of population. I'm sure you're aware. It was a 1.2 million at some point. Now it's a little over 700,000, 800,000. Forgive me, but we need to get that population back. We need it to grow. The only way that it's going to grow, that if we all work together, make it welcoming, safe, prosperous, and hospitable for everybody.
When we say mixed income housing, we often we realize that it's like when we say diversity, it's not the absence of one group, it's the conversion of everybody.
Yes.
Mixed income means that we should have some luxury lofts, right? We should have some larger apartments, but you're saying we should also have other things too. What are you hoping for those other 6 towers? I know there's other towers. I think GM and Dan Gilbert's folks are talking about demolishing 2 out of the 5 towers, right?
Yes, you're looking at demolishing towers 300 and 400, I believe it is.
Yes.
But what I do like about the plan that I've had an opportunity to review it from Bedrock, and that is the fact that, I mean, they're going to keep the skyline because they know how important the skyline is to residents in this city and people from around the area as well. They love that skyline, so that will be kept. But also, they want to bring in some affordable housing. They also plan to bring in, make sure that there's an entertainment area. You know, one of the most popular things about Chicago and Navy Pier, you know, is that, what is it, Ferris wheel or whatever it is that they have?
It's
Carnivals and
iconic, they have the rides.
Food trucks and the vendors. And
I'm talking about a place for families. Detroiters can bring their families out. They weren't able to do that before with the Renaissance Center. I know
No,
some
that's
people
true.
say they want to keep it the way it is and not change much about it, but Detroiters never really had an opportunity to enjoy.
I'm just having
the
fun now.
Renaissance
But didn't GM have GM days or something where they had like a carnival? I'm just remembering near the Renaissance Center for a few years, right? I think they had something like that. But you're talking about
on
a
the
permanent
parking
fixture.
lots. I'm talking about permanent fixtures, a place where it opens up space where people, when you walk across the street, you can go directly to the river.
Right.
You know,
Right.
those are the kinds of things we're talking
with
about.
gardens, flowers, vendors, restaurants.
Green
Absolutely.
space restaurants and so forth. And, you
Absolutely.
know,
I know one thing that you both have in common, and so many people are watching do as well, is a vision for a more vibrant riverfront, and that's going to help everyone who's a tenant in any of these places.
Yes,
Safe
for
and
a more
welcoming
vibrant, even
and
more beautiful
prosperous
riverfront,
and safe.
because it already is beautiful.
It is,
And,
yeah.
and
We
for
are-
folks who are asking for taxpayer dollars,
Sure.
you know, there
I'm sorry,
comes
we are-
their community benefits you
We
have
are
to do.
out of time for this conversation. We'll continue it during the break. I want to thank you, Councilwoman Dr. Al-Hadidi. Good to see you
Thank
both.
you.
Congratulations to you, by the way, as well.
Thank you.
A social media giant in court, what the Federal Trade Commission is trying to do to Meta after the break. You're watching The Pulse here on Fox 2. It is People, Power, and Politics. Welcome back to Detroit's only nightly political talk show. There's a lot going on in the tech world that you need to know about, involving some platforms you probably use every day. One of the biggest stories involves this company, Meta. Now, that's the parent company of Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. The platforms are on trial, accused of illegally monopolizing the social media market. The Federal Trade Commission is trying to prove Meta bought Instagram and WhatsApp to preserve a monopoly in social networking. Now, if the trial doesn't go Meta's way, they could be forced to break off Instagram and WhatsApp. Meta claims it competes with sites like X, TikTok, and YouTube. But Meta is not the only one in the hot seat. The DOJ is also trying to break up Google. They say they turned their search engine into an illegal monopoly. The DOJ wants to ban Google from striking deals with Apple and other companies to shield its search engine from competition, as well as force the sale of Chrome, its popular web browser. Now, some complicated stories to say the least, and a lot to unpack, and it does affect us. And when it comes to tech, there's only one guy to call, social media guru Ethan Lloyd. He's in Studio C tonight. Always good to see you here on The Pulse. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well.
Good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for sitting up with us here tonight.
Of course.
All right, so let's talk about this for a moment. This is an interesting thing. You have Google being accused of having an illegal monopoly. They're saying we're going to ban you from striking deals with Apple or other companies. And then Meta. They're accused of having an illegal monopoly. I feel like it's not a shock. I mean, if you look at what they own, it's pretty incredible how much ground they cover, right? I mean, it's not a sort of shock to anyone that they may have been accused of having a monopoly.
Yes, and I think that what a lot of people should know is that the currency for these platforms is data. They have built billion-dollar data centers across the world that allows them to sell our data to advertisers, what we do on the app and things that we do outside the app, which a whistleblower has confirmed in a recent subcommittee hearing in front of the U.S. Senate. So data is the name of the game, and for Meta, that is where the monopolization happened.
So when you look at data, you know, everyday folks who are just working hard and putting food on the table, we think about something that's valuable as money and stuff and food and cars and tech. But you don't think about personal information or data as being this like gold, but it truly is like gold in many ways, isn't it?
It is. You know, something that I heard in the subcommittee hearing that happened just a few weeks ago that I thought was really disturbing was that this is coming from a former Meta employee from the years of 2011 to 2017. So this is relatively recent. She said that they have it built into their data systems so that the algorithm, that big spooky word, it detects that if for example, a 13-year-old girl posts a selfie and deletes it, they automatically detect that their self-esteem is low, and so they show them beauty products as an advertisement. That is crazy. Like, we have to really understand that humanity is not involved in this process. This is all about currency, and they are taking advantage of people who are in not great situations for profit.
So can you legislate humanity into big tech?
I think so. It just takes a lot more paying attention. We have to really pay attention to what these big tech companies are doing. During that subcommittee hearing, she was a former global policy executive for Meta. She said that there is not enough government oversight happening at these big tech companies. We need to pay attention to what's going in and out of data centers. We can't be on the outside looking in, and we can't just look at tech people like nerds. We really need to know what they're doing, because when we do that, we give them the space to operate in silence. And
so what happens moving forward? What are the possible outcomes here? Could they force the hand of Meta to have to sell and break off Instagram or WhatsApp?
Yes, they can do that. I think that what needs to happen is Mark Zuckerberg needs to be brought to the table at a Senate hearing, and he needs to be grilled again. The one that we saw is outdated, and it's been confirmed that he lied in that Senate hearing. He mentioned in that Senate hearing that he did not do business with China. That's been confirmed by the whistleblower in the recent subcommittee hearing that he has. So we need to bring Mark Zuckerberg back to the hot seat, and we need to find out what kind of information are you guys distributing among the American people and beyond. Where is the power? Where are your goals? AI, what are your ambitions with that? That develops on its own, and we really need to know where your ambitions are with these platforms.
But I got to ask you, how effective are these hearings? Because I've been covering congressional hearings for 25 years.
Right.
I remember after Hurricane Katrina, I was living in Louisiana, and they had a hearing about how the storm went and what should have happened. Hearings are just exactly that, a place for people to hear things.
Right.
But what about binding action that comes from this? Could something be recommended? Could there be legislation because of a hearing?
Absolutely, there can be legislation because of a hearing. We all hope. I think what it does is it shows, it brings light to what's in the dark, for one. The other thing that, legislation, the issue with legislation is, we just saw this go on with TikTok. TikTok was a law that was passed that TikTok was going to be banned. That was a law. It was written and it was signed by Joe Biden. That was canceled out by President Trump. So even legislation may not be enough. What we need is to persuade the public opinion of these platforms. That's what really needs to happen. Because if the American people come together and say, we don't necessarily want a monopoly, we don't want our data being shared, and we don't want our insecurities being monetized and exploited, then we are really putting Mark Zuckerberg in the hot seat. It's not just about Senate. It's about us.
It's not just about the hearings. If you have a complaint, if you have a problem, if you're hearing someone like Ethan and you have an issue, you call your Congress people. You literally call them and say, I urge you to do something about it. Enough people call, they take action. But Ethan, it's always good to see you. Never enough time. Thanks for joining us here on The Pulse tonight. Always good to see you. That is The Pulse for tonight. Thank you, as always, for joining us. I'm Roop Raj. Have a good night.
That was amazing.
You did a great job.
That's good.
Thank you.